Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Air Raid Saturdays College Football YouTube channel. I am your host, Justin Perez, and today we're back with another conference predictions video. Today we're going to be talking about Conference USA today, and I'm going to be giving my predictions for each of the 9 schools that are in this conference for this college football season. There are no divisions in this conference, and we have several new members in this conference. Several of the older schools return, like FIU, Louisiana Tech, Middle Tennessee, UTEP, and Western Kentucky. However, we have 4 brand new teams in Jacksonville State, Liberty, New Mexico State, and Sam Houston. There's been an influxation. There's been a huge increase in conference realignment during this college football offseason. So as a result, many of the Conference USA's better teams jumped ship and joined some other conferences. So Conference USA definitely had to load up, and they definitely got some intriguing new schools here. Like I said, Jacksonville State, Liberty, New Mexico State, and Sam Houston are all newcomers to this conference. And this season's going to be a really fun season for Conference USA. It's going to be really interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how the newcomers will be able to compete in comparison to the schools that have stayed put from last year in Conference USA. So without further ado, I'm gonna be doing these teams in alphabetical order. I'm gonna try not to take too much time. I thought I had uploaded this video a while back, but then I went back on my channel today, which is August 19th, 2023. If you all are viewing this, I thought that this video was already posted, but for some reason it did not post on my channel, and I saw that last night. Extremely frustrating. I thought I was done with this, but I have to do a whole retake of this audio recording because my other audio recording got caught. It was there, and then it got lost. I don't know if I deleted it by accident without knowing or whatever, but this is take 2, and hopefully this video actually gets uploaded onto YouTube. So I'm gonna try to do this as best as I can. So without further ado, here we go. I'm gonna start in alphabetical order, starting up with the Florida International Golden Panthers. So let's kick this thing off. Alright, now, so starting off, we have the Florida International Panthers, who are head coached by Mike McIntyre. McIntyre came in last season. This is his second year at FIU, and his Panthers did not have a good season last year, as they went 4-8 and 2-6 in Conference USA. Florida International, this schedule is a little bit difficult because when looking at their non-conference slate, they have 2 really tough road trips against Arkansas and UConn. They also have a couple of other non-conference games against North Texas and Maine. Now, Florida International, I looked through several previews before the season for Conference USA from different outlets, and a lot of them agreed that Florida International could be the worst team in this conference this season, and I'd have to agree with the so quote unquote experts. Florida International, it's going to be really difficult for this team to get back into bowl contention this season. I don't think they have enough depth on both sides of the ball, and they lost a lot of their key players last season, either to graduation or through the transfer portal. So really, this is just a matter of, well, are the guys that are still on the team good enough to help get this team back into the bowl season? And I don't think so. But not only do they play 2 really tough road games in non-conference play, they also got to play 2 of Conference USA's top 2 teams. They got to play who are regarded by many as the 2 top teams in this conference in the final stretch of the season in November, and that's against Middle Tennessee on November 11th on the road, as well as Western Kentucky at home during the last game of the season on October 25th. On November 25th. Now, as far as how I see the season playing out, I think they're going to lose 4 of their first 5 games before the bye week. So they'll lose in week 0 to Louisiana Tech in what I think is going to be a really close game. I talked about that a little bit in my rankings of the 7 games in week 0, which I'll put a card in the upper right hand corner if you haven't checked that out. But I think that game's going to be close. I believe Louisiana Tech is favored by 10.5 points, which I think is too big of a spread, if you're asking me. I think that this game's going to be extremely close all the way to the wire. But I think that FIU will fall short in the season opener, and this is their first conference game this season as well on August 26th. So they'll lose that game. Then I see them picking up a win at versus Maine, who's from the FCS. This is one of the non-conference games that are on their schedule. They have 4 non-conference games on the schedule this year. So they got to play Maine as well. And I think that'll be a win. Maine's from the FCS. I think Florida International will take care of that rather easily. And then I see them losing their next 3 games to North Texas at home on September the 9th, to UConn on September the 16th on the road, and then at home again to one of the better teams in this conference going into the season, and that's Liberty on September 23rd. Now, as far as the North Texas and UConn games are concerned, I think that those games will be close enough to where Florida International has a chance to win that game, but it's going to depend on if they're able to not, the biggest question I have with a team like this, when they're going into a rebuilding season, my question is, how bad are they going to play? Are they going to play pretty good football and compete with their opponents, or are they just going to make a ton of mistakes and turn the ball over and, have bad coverage on defense and just give up a shit ton of points? I don't think that's going to be the case, at least here in these first 2 games of this 3-game losing streak. UConn struggled a little bit last year with their passing game with Zion Turner at quarterback. Now, Zion Turner was a true freshman last season that got thrown into war and did pretty well, but he struggled a little bit when making accurate passes. Now they get their true starting quarterback back this season. I forgot his name. You can go look that up if you want to. I completely forgot his name, and I apologize for that. But my point is that UConn's passing game should be way more efficient for this season when compared to last season. And North Texas too. I don't think North Texas is going to be a good football team at all this season. So I think Florida International has a chance to win this game. But I think that both of these North Texas and UConn games are going to have a couple bad breaks at the end, which will, put them in position to lose these games. So I see them starting off 1-3, and then this game against Liberty on September the 23rd, I think is going to be an absolute blowout. Liberty's coming off a banner year last season. Last season they went 8-5, but they have one of the better offenses in Conference USA, in my opinion, and they have a brand new head coach in Jamie Chadwell, who was known for having pretty high-octane offenses at Coastal Carolina. And I'm going to touch a little bit on that when we get to Liberty in just a bit here. So I think they'll lose those, 4 of their first 5 games. Then they have the bye week, and then they got to play 4 consecutive Wednesday games. Starting off on October the 4th against New Mexico State. I think they'll lose that game. New Mexico State, I am extremely high on New Mexico State heading into this season. I believe that the Aggies of New Mexico State will be one of the better teams in this conference. I think they'll be fine and competing right away, and I think they're going to try to prove to people that they deserve to be in a conference after years of being independent. So I think they'll lose to them, and I think they'll lose to UTEP before they'll pick up back-to-back wins against Jacksonville State on the 25th, and the week before that against Sam Houston on the road on October the 18th. Now, Sam Houston and Jacksonville State are both, newcomers. They're 2 of the 4 newcomers in this conference, but they both come from the FCS level, and even though both teams have, really good talents, I still believe that FIU will be able to beat those teams. Not handily, because they will compete. Sam Houston and Jacksonville State will compete in those games, but I think that Florida International will win both of those games to get to 3-6. So they got to win their last 3 games of the season to stay bowl eligible, to become bowl eligible. But unfortunately, their last 3 games are probably the toughest stretch they're going to have all season, as they start their November slate against Middle Tennessee on the road. Then they got to go to Arkansas, SEC country, on the road, and they play a really tough home finale against Western Kentucky. I believe that Florida International is going to lose all of these games, and they're going to finish the season at 3-9 and 2-6 in Conference USA. Now, I think that Florida International has the chance to win a couple more games. If you're asking realistic expectation-wise, I think Florida International's floor will be 3 wins and their ceiling will be 5 wins. Now, you might be asking, what other games can they win? Well, I look at that Louisiana Tech game as a possible win on the first night of the season. Then, the games against North Texas and UConn are also winnable. The New Mexico State game and UTEP game are winnable. And then maybe they're just good enough to pull off an upset against either Middle Tennessee or Western Kentucky. But my point is that there are enough winnable games on this slate to where Florida International could become bowl eligible, but I don't think they're talented enough to get to that point. And I think their ceiling will be a 5-7 record. But for my projection, I have them finishing 3-9 and 2-6 in Conference USA. So I don't predict a great season for Florida International, but something tells me that they could be a little bit better this season. So we'll see how 2023 unfolds for the FIU Panthers. All right, now transitioning over to our second team we're going to be talking about, and that's one of the 2 newcomers to the FBS level, and we're talking about the Jacksonville State Gamecocks. The Gamecocks are head coached by Rich Rodriguez, who's in his second year at Jacksonville State University. Last season was his first year, and for Jacksonville State's swan song in the FCS, they ended up finishing with a stupendous record of 9-2 and went undefeated in the Atlantic Sun Conference. And like I said earlier, this is their first season at the FBS level, and they come in from the FCS along with Sam Houston, who we'll get to in a little while. This season promises to be, even though it might be rough, whatever happens for Jacksonville State, to me, as long as they get up to 4 wins, it'll be a wonderful season for them at the FBS level. I think their fans are extremely excited for what's to come, and this could be the start of something very special for another Floridian Division I FBS football team. We could be witnessing the birth of something very special at Jacksonville State University, and they could be one of the best teams in Florida's rotation of FBS schools. And I know that sounds a little bit like an over-exaggeration, but if you look at what this program has been able to do at the FCS level, it makes me only think that this program has so much potential to be that and even more at the FBS level. And I think that this will be one of the best transitions from FCS to FBS that we'll see in a long time. Now, their non-conference slate features really tough games, and their opponents in non-conference play feature Coastal Carolina, Eastern Michigan, and South Carolina. And they also play the top Conference USA contenders in October, which are, in my opinion, Middle Tennessee, Liberty, and Western Kentucky. They play them back to back in October. From the beginning to the middle of October in a 3-week stretch. Now, not only do they play the top Conference USA contenders, I also believe that they might have some struggles against teams that really aren't seen as that good, that much better than Jacksonville State. But overall, I think a realistic expectation meter for them would be 4 wins the minimum and 6 wins the maximum. Now, just like James Madison came up to the FBS last year, and they ended up having a phenomenal season, but since they moved up from the FCS to the FBS level, they weren't eligible for a bowl game. So regardless of the record that Jacksonville State has, I don't think they'll be eligible for a bowl game. Now, I didn't look into any type of rules or any special rules to see that were in place for both Jacksonville State and Sam Houston, but we'll wait and find out and see what happens. I don't know. I haven't read any rules. Now, as far as what I think will happen this season, I think they'll win their first 2 games of the campaign, including their first ever game at the FBS level in Week 0 next Saturday against the UTEP Miners at home. I think this game is going to be a great boost for the program. I think that the crowd for Jacksonville State will be really energetic, and that'll really get that football team going, and that'll get them ready to play for this game. I think that, since their first game at the FBS level is a home game, I think it'll only be right and only be fitting if they get a win in front of their home crowd. So I'm going to get, and besides, UTEP is not one of the better, they're a decent team, and we'll get to them later on, but I have so many questions about this UTEP team. So with that, I'll give Jacksonville State a win, and I'll give them another win against East Tennessee State on September the 2nd. So they start the season off with back-to-back wins, which is very encouraging. However, on September 9th, things start to fall off a little bit as they'll lose to Coastal Carolina. Now, if you're asking me, this Coastal Carolina game could be closer than what people are thinking. I know Coastal Carolina was a phenomenal team last year, but they have a brand new head coach, and usually with the new head coach comes in new systems, new philosophies, and it'll take a little bit of time for players to fully get acclimated to the system. Although they have the entirety of spring camp to do so, it's nothing like playing in an actual organized football game. And I think that'll be the case here. Even though I expect Coastal Carolina to somewhat struggle a little bit early on in this game, I think they'll pull away and I think they'll win. So Jacksonville State will go to 2-1 before the bye week. Then I see them getting up a key win against Eastern Michigan from the MAC. Again, another home game before they kick off that streak of, I believe, 5 consecutive weeknight games. Yeah, 5 consecutive games weeknights. Now, they'll get that win at Eastern Michigan, but then I see them losing their next 6 games to eliminate them out of possible bowl eligibility. I think that they'll lose to Sam Houston in the first matchup between the new FBS teams. I think they'll lose to Sam Houston on Thursday night. On September the 28th. They have a short week to prepare for that one. And then here comes the tough kick in the groin, as I like to say. The kick in the groin, the kick in the nuts for Jacksonville State, that they got to play the top 3 teams in the conference back-to-back weeks. I think they'll lose to Middle Tennessee on Wednesday, October 4th. Then I think they'll lose to Liberty on October 10th. And then I think they'll lose to Western Kentucky on October the 17th. And then I see them also losing the next 2 games after that to Florida International and South Carolina. I see this 6-game stretch here, and I think this is going to be the do-or-die stretch of the season for Jacksonville State. If they want to be able to prove to people that they're capable of being a formidable opponent for many teams at the FBS level, they're going to have to at least win maybe 2 or 3 of these games in order to prove that point. And I don't see them winning in any of these games. And the reason why is, you got 4 really tough teams to play in this stretch. Middle Tennessee, Liberty, and Western Kentucky are no slouches. But then you also have South Carolina on November the 4th. And to be honest with you, I think Jacksonville State will be somewhat competitive in this game. I think they have a chance. But at the end of the day, I think South Carolina is going to run all over these guys in the second half. And that would probably be the same thing with the Liberty game as well. Now, the Middle Tennessee and Western Kentucky games, they have a little bit more of a potential, at least in my opinion, to be closer than what people are expecting. But I still think those are games that they're going to lose. And the Sam Houston contest and the Florida International contest, they're sort of like 50-50 games to me. But I think that Jacksonville State in their first year at the FBS level are going to probably have several more bad breaks than good ones. But, so I see them losing 6 straight before their second bye week of the season. But when they come out, we go back to playing Saturday games. And I see them pulling off a pretty big win at home against Louisiana Tech. Now, Louisiana Tech, which we'll get to in a little while, they're seen as the most improved team in Conference USA this season because they have a slew of transfers, including a very important quarterback, which we'll get to later on. But I do think that Jacksonville State will be able to pull out at least an upset win against one of the teams in Conference USA. And I think that Louisiana Tech will be one of the biggest potential victims of that. And I think that in this prediction, I think I'll give them a win against Louisiana Tech. So I'll give them a win to finish, to be 3-7, and then I have them, at 4-7, and then I have them losing the last game on the road to New Mexico State to finish 4-8 and 2-6 in the conference. So basically the same conference record as FIU, just a win better overall because of that extra non-conference win. Now, I say that the ceiling for this team could be up to 6 wins. Now, when I'm looking at the schedule, of course, you got to throw in the game against Sam Houston. That's a potential win. That's a 50-50 game. And you also have the Florida International game. That's a 50-50 game in my opinion. And then also that last game of the season at New Mexico State. That's also a 50-50 game that could go either way. I just think that New Mexico State will have a little bit more firepower on offense that is going to propel them to a season finale win against the Gamecocks at Jacksonville State. So overall, I see Jacksonville State finishing 4-8. But I still think that Gamecocks fans will be somewhat pleased with this record considering it's their first year at the FBS level. So, congratulations to Jacksonville State University and their fans, and I wish you guys nothing but the best at the FBS level. Congratulations, and I hope you guys have a great season this year. All right, now moving over to our third team in this Conference USA preview is the second of the four newcomers that we're talking about in this conference predictions video for this season in Conference USA, and that is the Liberty Flames. So Liberty, they are in their first year in a conference, I believe. I believe this is their first year in a conference since they've been to the FBS level. I think they've been an independent for their entire existence in the FBS until this season. So this is their first year in Conference USA, and not only is their first season in a conference, this is also their first season with a brand new head coach as the Flames of Liberty University bring in Jamie Chadwell, who's in his first year here at the school. Now, Jamie Chadwell comes over from Coastal Carolina, and Jamie Chadwell was able to help really help and just bring life and excitement into a Coastal Carolina program that also moved up from the FCS level, and now they're in the Sun Belt Conference. So Jamie Chadwell has a really good resume as far as being able to build up teams who have moved from the FCS to the FBS level. And I'm not saying that Liberty needs rebuilding, because they clearly don't, as they made a bowl game last year and they've been one of the better teams since in all of Group of 5 football since they moved up to the FBS level. But I think he's going to do a little bit better than what Hugh Freeze did. Hugh Freeze, I believe, left for Auburn. You can go back and check my SEC predictions video for that, which is understandable. A bigger school means more money, and a more ability, to win when you have better recruits coming in. So Jamie Chadwell comes in now after having a really high-octane offense with Grayson McCall and that Chanticleer offense at Coastal Carolina. Now he's going to come into a situation where they still have a bunch of playmakers on offense, and they have, Liberty has a ton of potential to put up a bunch of points in every game that they play in. Now they have a favorable non-conference slate as they play Bowling Green from the MAC, Buffalo from the MAC, and then they also got to play Old Dominion from the Sun Belt, who wasn't very good last year, and a shitty UMass team on November 18th. On November 18th, excuse me. I'm sorry, UMass fans, that I keep calling you guys crappy and shitty. For those who watch this, but it's the truth, unfortunately. So they have a favorable non-conference slate that really should be the base for 4 wins, because if you look at all 4 of their non-conference opponents, I don't see how Liberty can lose any of them. I believe that this Flames team is better than Bowling Green. I think they're better than Buffalo. They're way better than both Old Dominion and UMass. So those are already 2 wins in November, and I think they're capable of beating Bowling Green and Buffalo from the MAC. So really, at the end of the day, these should, it should be at least 4 wins for them, which is the best case scenario, obviously, from non-conference play. And they should be in contention for the Conference USA title. I know that this is their first year in Conference USA, but when you look at this conference, as far as talent-wise, I believe that Liberty is right up there with the Middle Tennessees and Western Kentuckys of the world. And my reasonable expectations for this team is to go from anywhere from 8 to 10 wins. So 8 wins is the minimum, and 10 wins is the maximum. Now, as far as how I see the season playing out, I see them winning their first 4 games, which are against Bowling Green on September the 2nd, New Mexico State in their Conference USA opener on September the 9th, Buffalo on September the 16th, and then Florida International on the road on September 23rd. Their first 2 games of this 4-game stretch are at home, and then the last 2 are on the road. So I see them starting off 4-0 before the bye week, and then lucky for them, they got to play the 2 newcomers to the FBS level in Sam Houston and Jacksonville State. So I see them getting off to a perfect 6-0 start and being bowl eligible by the time the middle of October comes. Now the next 2 games here are going to determine, in my opinion, on whether Liberty makes it to the Conference USA Championship game in their first year here in CUSA, as they got to play 2 veterans in this conference who are known to being in contention for the conference title, and that's Middle Tennessee and Western Kentucky. Both of these teams are going to be extremely tough challenges for Liberty. Now, it's possible that they can win at least one of these games, if possible both of these games, because they're super talented, but I believe that they'll lose to both of these teams. And the reason why is because I just don't think that Liberty, I think that Liberty's lack of experience in this conference playing against Liberty's lack of experience in playing in a conference is gonna, in my opinion, will help push this team back to get to a conference title, at least early on in their Conference USA existence. And also, Middle Tennessee and Western Kentucky, they're right up there for teams that have just as much talent as Liberty. Both of those games are on Tuesday nights, so I see them losing both of those games. However, I see them winning their last 4 games of the season to end the year at 10-2 and 6-2 in Conference USA. I think they're better than Louisiana Tech, so they'll beat them on November the 4th. They'll get by Old Dominion on November 11th. They'll blow out UMass on November 18th, and then they'll take down UTEP in a tough contest in the final game of the season on November 25th. I think this Liberty team has the potential to make it all the way to a conference championship game berth, but I think their lack of experience in playing in a conference will set them back, especially when they got to play the top 2 contenders in this conference back-to-back weeks late in October. So overall, I see this team finishing 10-2, but it's still a phenomenal season, and Liberty could be, they could be ranked at the end of the season if everything goes right. And it's possible that even if they win both of those 2 games against Middle Tennessee and Western Kentucky, it's possible that Liberty could be the Group of 5 champion this season. They're in a conference now. They're in a situation where they're able to win a Group of 5 conference and get enough recognition from the voters to play in a New Year's 6 bowl game. They're at this point now, and it's extremely possible. So I see Liberty having a phenomenal season, even though they don't make the conference championship game. Alright, now let's transition and talk about our 4th team. Yes, this is our 4th team. 4 of 9 teams. And this 4th team will be the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. Now, Louisiana Tech is head coached by Sonny Crumby, who's at his 2nd year at Louisiana Tech University. As that's literally what they're called. Louisiana Tech University. But anyway, Sonny Crumby finished last year, or his first year at LA Tech, with a record of 3 with the 3-9 record. Now he's heading into his 2nd year at LTU with a little bit of a different situation, because now he has a slew of transfers that should lead to a massive improvement. And those transfers include quarterback Hank Bachmeier. Bachmeier started for the Boise State Broncos for, I believe, the last 2 to 3 years, and he was really solid as Boise State's quarterback. However, health issues have been a common issue throughout his college career so far. And I think that he definitely needed to change the scenery, and now he's getting it with Louisiana Tech. They have tough non-conference trips against SMU and Nebraska. And even though they have a slew of transfers, and even though they should be the most improved team in Conference USA this season, I still don't think it's enough to be considered a true contender in Conference USA. Now, the way I see this season going for the Bulldogs, I see them winning 3 of their first 4 games. They have that Week 0 game against Florida International, which again I talked about it. I'll put the card in the upper right hand corner if you haven't seen my ranking of each of the games for Week 0. So I put that in the upper right hand corner. Again, the Conference USA opener. I'll do it for FIU, and I'll do it again for Louisiana Tech. Watch that video if you haven't. I think they'll win that one. Then I think they'll lose on the road to SMU, and then I think they'll pick up a couple of nice key wins versus Northwestern State from the FCS level, and versus North Texas from the American Athletic Conference. North Texas left Conference USA for the American Athletic Conference this season. So they have a nice 3-1 start, but then they have a really tough 4-game stretch really before the bye week, as they got to play on the road at Nebraska on September 23rd, which I think they'll lose. Then they have a short week as they play on a Friday night on the road against UTEP on September 29th. That's a game I think they'll also lose. And then they have an even shorter week as they play the next Thursday night at home against Western Kentucky to start their October slate on the 5th of that month, which I'll also think they'll lose. But here's the kick though. If Louisiana Tech wants to make it to a bowl game, which I think they will, they're gonna have to pull off an upset against one of the better teams on their schedule, and I think they'll be able to do that and end this 3-game losing streak on Tuesday, October the 10th at Middle Tennessee State, or at Middle Tennessee. It's gonna be an even shorter week for Louisiana Tech, but just because they have shorter weeks, it doesn't mean that they can't go out and perform And I think this team is talented enough where they could overcome a shorter week of preparation and come in and win one of these difficult bowl games. So I think that they'll win to improve their record to 4-4 before the bye week, and then they have extra time now to prepare for New Mexico State, who they'll be playing at home on Tuesday night on October the 24th, and that's a game that I also think that they'll win. So right away I see Louisiana Tech coming back from that 3-game losing streak and starting off the season at 5-4 through their first 9 games. Then here's the stretch. They have a couple of toss-up games against Sam Houston and Jacksonville State, and they have a really tough opponent on November the 4th against Liberty. Now, I do not think they'll beat Liberty, as we just talked about them like a few minutes ago. However, I do think that they'll beat Sam Houston to get to bowl eligibility as they improve to 6-5. But then during the last game of the season on November 18th, I see them suffering a clunker on the road to Jacksonville State. Now, definitely, the realistic expectations meter you see on the left side of the screen for my bullet point notes, definitely 5 to 7 wins is possible. I don't think Louisiana Tech's going to be extremely bad this season to where they're 4-8 or 3-9. I think that their floor is 5 wins, and I definitely think that their ceiling is 7 wins. I don't think they'll get to get more than 7 wins because, again, I think that those SMU games and Nebraska games will be losses, and they also have a couple of other really difficult games, including that Western Kentucky matchup, and it's possible that they could lose to Middle Tennessee in that game, even though I project a win. But I think 7 wins is good enough for them, and the most that they can get this season. Though that stretch in their last 3 games can prove to be somewhat difficult. Even though I see them losing to Jacksonville State, they could easily switch that around and get to 7-5 and 5-3 in Conference USA. But as of right now, I see this team finishing 6-6 and 4-4 in Conference USA play. Like I said, this team is talented enough to make a bowl game, to be on the cusp, to be a fringe bowl team. But I don't think they made enough improvements right away to become a true contender in the Conference USA championship race. But still a really solid season for Louisiana Tech, and a big 3-win improvement and a postseason berth after suffering a difficult, frustrating 3-9 campaign last season. I think Louisiana Tech fans will be mildly impressed by that, and I think they'll be really happy with that result if it ends up coming out that way. So 6-6 and 4-4 for Louisiana Tech is my prediction, and let's move on to one of the biggest contenders in Conference USA. Alright, now moving on, we have the Middle Tennessee Blue Raiders, who in my opinion are one of the top 2 teams in this conference heading into this season. The Blue Raiders, as they're called, which I believe, by the way, before I continue on, I gotta give props to Middle Tennessee. They have an amazing mascot or team name, as many people say, in the Blue Raiders, and that logo that they have is absolutely sick. I believe it's one of the best logos in all of NCAA intercollegiate athletics. So, before I actually get into the program here, I want to say, Middle Tennessee fans, you got a phenomenal team name and a even better and sick logo. Now, moving on and getting back to serious business, Middle Tennessee, the Blue Raiders, they're head coached by Rick Stockstill, and to say that Stockstill is one of the more underrated coaches in college football will be an understatement. He has survived really not an unfortunate situation, but I guarantee you that it was somewhat of a difficult situation for him to come in. He survived a difficult situation, and he has done nothing but keep the Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders football program above water. To say that he's been amazing is an understatement in my opinion. He's heading into his 18th year as Blue Raiders head coach, and he has an 109 win at 103 loss record. Just absolutely staggering for a program that is still considered to be relatively young in FBS football. And they are, even though they've been up here for a long time now. Now, last season, Middle Tennessee State finished 500 at 4-4 in Conference USA play, and they finished the regular season at 7-5. However, in the postseason, they won the Hawaii Bowl against San Diego State to improve their record and finish the season at 8-5. Now, when taking a look at this schedule, They have really tough non-conference opponents to start the season, as in the first 2 games of the 2023 campaign, they got to go on the road to SEC country, as they got to play Alabama on September the 2nd and Missouri on September the 9th. Those are really, really tough games to play. But after those games, you have a really favorable schedule the rest of the way. Now, they should be favored in every Conference USA game, at least in my opinion, they should be, except the Western Kentucky game, because Western Kentucky is coming in as the team, as the top team in Conference USA heading into the season. Now, my realistic expectation for Middle Tennessee, I sometimes call Middle Tennessee State still getting used to that, but my realistic expectation for Middle Tennessee is to be anywhere from 7 to 10 wins. Obviously, 7 being the floor and 10 being the ceiling. Now, I see them starting off with back-to-back losses to Alabama and Missouri, but then I think they'll even up their record at 2-2 when they play Murray State on September the 16th and Colorado State on September the 23rd. So they'll be 2-2. Then I think they'll lose their Conference USA opener to Western Kentucky on Thursday, September 28th, which that'll be a big one. That'll be the game that really, I think, tells us how good Middle Tennessee is. But then I think they'll pick up a win versus Jacksonville State on Wednesday the next week, and then I think they'll pick up a loss next week, on a shorter week after that, against Louisiana Tech on October the 10th. Then we have probably the biggest game of the season, and the game that'll keep Middle Tennessee in Conference USA Championship contention, as they got to go on the road on Tuesday night on October 17th to play the Liberty Flames. I talked about Liberty, and I think that they'll lose to both Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee, so as a result, you can chalk that game up as a win for Middle Tennessee, and I think they'll be 4-4 heading into the bye week. Now, after the bye week, you look at the last 4 games for Middle Tennessee, and they got to play 2 games on the road and 2 games at home. However, all of these games are winnable for Middle Tennessee. They have a really nice soft cushion that'll be able to propel them to a possible Conference USA Championship game berth. They got to play New Mexico State on the road on November 4th, and I think they'll win that game. Then they got to play the next 2 games in their home stadium to Florida International and UTEP on both November 11th and November 18th respectively. I think they'll win both of those games, and then at the end of the season they got to take a trip to Sam Houston to play the Bearkats, who we'll talk about in a little while, and I think they'll get a win to finish the regular season at 8-4 and 6-2 in Conference USA. Now, it's possible they could win a couple more games. Now, the Alabama game is a throwaway game. I don't think they have any chance in hell to win that game. However, I am not throwing out that Missouri game as an automatic loss. I know the Missouri Tigers are supposed to be good this year, and I know they're in the SEC, but Middle Tennessee, this is a team that went to Miami on the road and beat the Hurricanes last season when Miami was favored to win that game. So Middle Tennessee has proved that they can upset a Power 5 conference team on the road. So really, at the end of the day, I'm not ruling out this game as a loss. And it wouldn't shock me if Middle Tennessee goes on the road and knocks off Missouri. So that's a potential win. The Western Kentucky game's a potential win, and the Louisiana Tech game's a potential win. Now, really, that's 3 games. So I'm adding 3, potential wins to this record. But at the end of the day, I don't think they'll get to 11 wins. I think they're going to lose at least 2 games somewhere along the line. So if you're asking me, the 2 likely games that Middle Tennessee State can add to get to 10 wins will be those Western Kentucky and Louisiana Tech games. But I also wanted to mention that I'm not going to throw out that Missouri game on September the 9th. So overall, I see Middle Tennessee, once again, I see them finishing 8-4 and 6-2 in Conference USA this season. Alright, now we have 4 more teams to get through, and now we're moving on to the New Mexico State Aggies, who are the 3rd of the 4 new members in Conference USA this season. Now, last year was a phenomenal dream year for New Mexico State fans and supporters, including myself, because Jerry Kill came in last year. Nobody was expecting much of him in his first year, and he was able to really, in my opinion, he was really able to cement himself as a phenomenal college football coach. You know, last year made everybody forget that New Mexico State was considered one of the worst teams in Division One FBS football. And last season was just a phenomenal year. They ended up winning their last game of the season against Valparaiso, which was a postponed game. They got to 6-6, and they made it to the Quick Lane Bowl and beat an upset Bowling Green to have their first winning season in a long time. And this is New Mexico State's first season in a conference and also a very long time. They've been an independent for many years now. And things are looking up for the New Mexico State Aggies, especially if you ask me. I am extremely high on their potential. I am extremely high just based on what they did last season. And now they're going to go back into a situation where, okay, you know, they're in a conference for the first time since they were in the Sun Belt in 2017. And now they're going to try to prove to people that they could end up actually, you know, being a competitive force in Conference USA. I like the direction that Jerry Kill is putting towards this team. I like the direction. And I like a lot of their returning players coming back, including quarterback Diego Pavia, who's one of the more underrated quarterbacks in college football. And he was a major reason as to why New Mexico State was able to go from 2-10 in 2021 to 7-6 in 2022. Now, when looking at what we got from New Mexico State this year, this is their first year in Conference USA, as I mentioned earlier. It's their first conference season since they were in the Sun Belt back in 2017. But it's also interesting to note that I believe New Mexico State is the only team in college football this season, at least at the FBS level, to play 13 games this season. So they have 5 non-conference games, and their non-conference slate is super manageable. Their non-conference opponents include UMass, Western Illinois, New Mexico, Hawaii, and then Auburn late in the season on November 18th in Jordan-Hare Stadium. Excluding that Auburn game, the rest of their non-conference schedule should be really manageable, and you know, it should be the base for 4 wins, because you have 3 FBS teams that are really bad, and then you have an FCS team in Western Illinois. So it is possible that this New Mexico State team could have just a phenomenal, amazing record this season. Now, they won't win the conference title, as I don't believe they have enough to compete for a Conference USA championship, but the Aggies have potential to do a ton of damage in this conference. Now, since they have that extra game this season, since they have 13 games, I don't know if there's a rule for the NCAA that requires New Mexico to win 7 games instead of 6 now. But if they still need to get only 6 wins to become bowl eligible, then they're going to be in the driver's seat. If they need 7 wins, I think they'll be able to do that as well. So looking at the realistic expectations, I see them anywhere from 5 to 9 wins. Now, they are a talented ball club, but it's interesting to note that New Mexico State, during years where they've made bowl games, they fell apart the next season. Now, they only made 1 bowl game since 1960, or only 2 bowl games since 1960 prior to this, and that was in 2017 when they finished their Sun Belt Conference run with the win in the Arizona Bowl, and then last year, both were 7-6 finishes. In 2017, under Doug Martin, they finished 7-6 and won the Arizona Bowl, and then in 2018, the next season, they went 3-9. So a potential, you know, it's not. I don't think it's too crazy to assume that a potential dip in wins could happen, but I don't think it's gonna happen to this New Mexico State team this season. Now, looking at their schedule, we just went over the non-conference games, and now I'll go over my predictions. So I see New Mexico State beating UMass and Western Illinois early to start the season off 2-0. Then I think they'll lose to Liberty to drop to 2-1. But then I think they'll beat New Mexico and Hawaii on the road to get to 4-1 overall before the bye week. And then after the bye week, they'll have extra time to prepare to get to play Florida International, and I believe that New Mexico State will be able to take down the Panthers at home in front of their home crowd on national TV on Wednesday, October the 4th. But then they got to play 3 more weeknight games. The next 2 are versus Sam Houston and at UTEP on Wednesday nights, and then they got to play Louisiana Tech on a Tuesday night on October the 24th. I think they'll lose all those 3 games to go on a 3-game losing streak. Then I don't think they'll lose to Middle Tennessee on November 4th, since again it's a short week, since they got to play the next game. So I think they'll lose 4 in a row to get to 5-5. But then I see them, winning 2 of their last 3 games against Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State. And then in between those games, they'll suffer their 6th and final loss against Auburn on the road. I think that New Mexico State has enough talent to where they can take down at least one of the top teams in Conference USA. And I think that Western Kentucky will be the recipient to that. Now, Western Kentucky has a high-scoring offense, but their defense has a few questions. So we'll see how they perform this season. But I'm going to give New Mexico State a win against Western Kentucky, as well as a win against Jacksonville State. So I see New Mexico State finishing with the losing record in Conference USA at 3-5. But because of their non-conference schedule and because of that extra game, I see them finishing 7-6 and making it to a bowl game for a second straight year. And if they make a bowl game for a second straight year this season, it'll mark the first time the program has reached back-to-back bowl games since the 1959 and 1960 teams when they won the Sun Bowl. In 1959, New Mexico State went 8-3 under Warren Woodson, and then they went a perfect 11-0 the next season in 1960 to be ranked 17th in the country. We could be seeing another one of those seasons, or we could be seeing the second time where New Mexico State makes it to back-to-back bowl games for the first time since 1959 and 1960. So New Mexico State, expect them to be in the bowl picture this year, and expect them to be back in the bowl game race this year. I have them finishing 7-6 this season, which should be enough to make it to bowl games. Alright, now we're going to transition to our third to last team here in this Conference USA predictions video, and that's the Sam Houston Bearkats, who are led by head coach Casey Keeler, who's in his 10th year at Sam Houston and has an 85-27 record. Last season, in their final year in the FBS, they went 5-4, but that was because I think they could have won way more games last season. But Casey Keeler actually redshirted a lot of his better players in anticipation for this first year at the FBS level. So we have Jacksonville State, who we talked about, and now we're talking about the second team to move up to the next level, to the highest level of college football, and that's Sam Houston. So this is their first year, like I said, at the FBS level. Casey Keeler actually redshirted a lot of his better players last season to compete for this season. This could be an interesting season for Sam Houston. I don't believe that they'll be a complete washout. I believe that they will be competitive this season, but they will not be at the top of the Conference USA standings. And also, when looking at their non-conference schedule, they got to play BYU, Air Force, and also Houston. BYU and Houston are now in the Big 12 Conference, and Air Force is supposed to be one of the better teams and one of the top contenders in the Mountain West Conference. So a really tough non-conference schedule for them. My realistic expectations for this team is to get to anywhere from 4 to 6 wins. Now, starting off the season, I have them losing at BYU to open their season. But then in their first home game in Houston, which I forgot to put on the slide here, by the way, but this game will be played in Houston. Their first home game against Air Force, I believe, will be a win. I think just like the Jacksonville State scenario, I don't think it doesn't matter who. To me, it doesn't matter who, what team, Sam Houston and Jacksonville State playing their home openers. I think that there'll be wins. I think that they'll win both of them, and I think that Sam Houston's going to be able to win in this game. So they'll get to 1-1. And they have a really early bye week, and they got to play every other week the rest of the way. I think they'll lose to Houston coming out of the bye week. Then, even though they have a short week, I do think they will get the upper hand in this first matchup between the two FBS newbies when it comes to Sam Houston and Jacksonville State. This game will be played at home for Sam Houston, so I think they'll get that win. I think they'll lose to Liberty the next week, and they'll beat New Mexico State, which is possible at happening, and then they'll lose to Florida International on Wednesday, October 18th. And then I see them picking up back-to-back wins to get to 5-4 against UTEP and FCS Kennesaw State but then I see them losing their last 3 games of the season to drop to 5-7. They'll lose to Louisiana Tech, Western Kentucky, and Middle Tennessee. Doesn't help for Sam Houston that they play Western Kentucky and Middle Tennessee to end the season. So I think they'll lose their last 3 games, but that'll still be a pretty good 5-7 record and a pretty decent 3-5 Conference USA record for a team that's just beginning its FBS life. So I believe that even though Sam Houston won't make a bowl game with this record, if they're eligible at all, I think that Bearcats fans will be really satisfied if their season was to end one game below 500 at 5-7. And now let's talk about the second to last team in this predictions video, and that is the UTEP Miners, who are head coached by Dana DeMel, who's in his 6th year and has a really bad record at 17-40. I'm not the biggest fan of Dana DeMel. I don't really like what I don't like what he's done, obviously, so far at UTEP, but I'm not saying he's a bad coach. I'm just not a big fan of his. But last season, UTEP had a pretty good year for their standards. They ended up going 5-7 and 3-5 in Conference USA. Obviously, they still missed the bowl game, but being 1 win out from bowl contention really isn't the worst thing in the world, and they just need that little extra push to get to that 6th win. Now, they have road games against Northwestern and Arizona in non-conference play, but they have several winnable games in conference play to help propel them to a bowl game. Now, my realistic expectations for the Miners are from anywhere from 4 to 7 wins. This team has the potential to make a bowl game, and they have the potential to miss a bowl game. So it's kind of a 50-50 toss-up. UTEP is one of those teams in college football that we don't know what we're getting at all. We really do not know what we're getting with this team. We could be seeing a really good team, or we could be seeing a really bad team. I think we're going to be seeing a mediocre team for the most part. They're not going to be super good, but they're not going to be super bad. They're going to be somewhere in between this year. And as you can see by my projected record, I have them finishing 5-7 and 3-5 in Conference USA. Now, to start the season, I talked about Jacksonville State. I believe that this game is a game of destiny for Jacksonville State. And as a result, I see UTEP picking up a loss to the Gamecocks. But then I see them picking up back-to-back wins against Incarnate Word and a pretty decent-sized upset against Northwestern from the Big Ten. If you watch my Big Ten predictions preview video, you'll know that I'm not high on Northwestern football at all this season. They have the huge, hazing allegations that are going on. Pat Fitzgerald got fired during these hazing allegations, and honestly, I don't think Northwestern's going to be a good team at all this season. I think they're going to be one of the worst teams in college football this season. So as a result, I definitely think that Northwestern will win this game. Now, I believe that UTEP will definitely win this game against Northwestern. Now, after that, I believe they'll suffer back-to-back losses at Arizona and versus UNLV to finish out non-conference play. But then I have them picking up 3 consecutive wins. First is a Friday night win against Louisiana Tech at home to finish out the September slate. Then they have a bye week, and then they have back-to-back Wednesday night wins after the bye week against Florida International and New Mexico State. The FIU game is at Wednesday on October 11th, and the New Mexico State game is on the following Wednesday night on October the 18th. So I think they'll beat both of those teams to get to 5-3. But then I see them losing their last 4 games of the season to finish the year with another 5-7 record and 3-5 in Conference USA. So identical from last year. I see them losing to Sam Houston, although they could win that game on Wednesday. Then they'll lose to Western Kentucky. They'll have another bye week, and they'll lose to Middle Tennessee and Liberty. Again, it does not help UTEP's cause when they have to play the top 3 teams in Conference USA to end the season. And I don't think they're good enough to beat any of those teams. And I think they'll also have a clunker against Sam Houston, as this team should have a clunker here and there against an opponent that they should be able to beat. And as a result, I see UTEP finishing another disappointing year at 5-7. I'm sure last year's 5-7 mark was pretty, accepted by many UTEP fans, but anything less than a bowl game now this season would be seen as a massive disappointment. And I think that UTEP has enough talent to get to a bowl game, but I don't know if they're going to be able to pull it off. Now, as far as other games they could win, You definitely got to throw up those two games against Jacksonville State and Sam Houston as potential wins in this scenario. I also don't rule out the game against UNLV, but the games against Arizona, Middle Tennessee, West Kentucky, and Liberty, they should all be losses in my opinion. So really, if Northwestern wants to win and get to a bowl game this season, they're gonna have to beat one of the two newcomers to the FBS level, and they're gonna have to take down UNLV if they want to get there. They're gonna have to at least win one of those games. They could win two of those games to get to 7 wins. I don't think they'll get to 8 this season. So once again, I see UTEP finishing 5-7 and 3-5 in Conference USA action. Alright, now the last team we're going to be talking about in this Conference USA predictions video are the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. I misspoke there for a bit. The Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. There we go. Western Kentucky, head coach by Tyson Helton, who's in his 5th year, and 32-21 overall in his tenure as the Hilltoppers head coach. Last season, WKU finished 9-5. They went 6-2 in Conference USA, and they won the New Orleans Bowl against the highly favored South Alabama team. Now this year they have a tough non-conference road trips to Ohio State and at Troy. However, they will be favorites to win the conference championship, at least in many people's eyes, including myself. My realistic expectations for this team are to get from anywhere from 8 to 10 wins. Now, as you can see on the right side of the screen, I only see them losing 3 games this season. Those are the games against Ohio State on September 16th, at Troy on September the 23rd, and versus New Mexico State on November 11th. So I talked about New Mexico State earlier, and I mentioned how I think they have enough talent where they can upset one of the bigger teams, one of the better teams in Conference USA. I think they have enough talent, especially on offense, and I believe the recipient to that will be Western Kentucky. Now, Western Kentucky has a really damn good offense by themselves, and their defense, I think, their defense did okay, but I think they could be a little bit better. They actually played really well last season, but there were times throughout last season where I just felt like they could have played a little bit better. I watched a little bit of Western Kentucky football last season, and there were some plays that I saw defensively that really ruined their chances to get to the Conference USA title game. But now they have another chance, and now without UTSA and North Texas and all these other teams in the conference, Western Kentucky has a legitimate chance to win this damn thing. I think they'll start off 2-0 with South Florida and Houston Christian wins. Then I think after the Ohio State and Troy games, they'll win their next 5 games against Middle Tennessee, Louisiana Tech, Jacksonville State, Liberty, and UTEP before they suffer that clunker to New Mexico State. And then I think they'll win the last 2 games of the season to Sam Houston and Florida International to get to a record of 9 wins and 3 losses and 7-1 in Conference USA action. I think this team is the team to beat in Conference USA, and I think this is going to be the class of this conference this season. And if you want to win a Conference USA title, you got to get through Bowling Green, Kentucky. So I have the Hilltoppers finishing 9-3 and 7-1 in the conference. Alright, and that is going to do it for these Conference USA football season prediction videos, or this video for Conference USA predictions for the 2023 season. Just to recap, I have Western Kentucky finishing in first place at 7-1. Then I have Middle Tennessee and Liberty tying for second place at 6-2. But since Middle Tennessee beats Liberty in my predictions, Middle Tennessee will get the second spot in the Conference USA championship game. And then Liberty finishes third at 6-2. Louisiana Tech will finish fourth at 4-4. Then Sam Houston and UTEP and New Mexico State will finish tied for 5th place with a 3-5 record each. And Florida International and Jacksonville State will be tied for last place at 2-6 in the conference. And my Conference USA championship game prediction, I have Western Kentucky beating Middle Tennessee to win the Conference USA championship for 2023. So those are my predictions for this year's CUSA season. Please let me know what you think in the comment section below. Like I said, I apologize for those who were waiting on this video. I thought this video was uploaded a while back, but obviously the video didn't upload for several reasons, including one of them being that it wasn't the right video format, and I also had to re-record this commentary because my original recording got lost, and I don't know what happened to it. Like I said, I might have deleted it by accident. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like, comment, share, and more importantly, subscribe. And I'll talk to you guys later. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I'll be out with more content in the near future. Take care, everybody.